Jorven sat quietly, his tendrils coiling in agitation as he examined the mass spectrometry readout of the little leaf in front of him. It was crammed full of compounds, some mundane like glucose and cellulose, found on many habitable carbon-rich planets, some more exotic, like chlorophyll. That was not what attracted his attention. Merciful stars! What is this hellish monstrosity? He whispered, staring in horror at a separated readout of toxins. Neurotoxins crammed this leaf to the brim. Jorven had suspected as much, given that one of the unfortunate interns had to be hospitalized after touching the leaf without proper precautions, but even now, knowing it was sealed in an airtight tube and that those poisons couldn't reach him, Jorven still felt as if he could smell the fumes. He remembered the agonized look on his intern's face as the boy went down, convulsing violently. No wonder Kaish collapsed. By his count, there had to be at least 8 known neurotoxins in that plant. Jorven's tendrils trembled slightly as he floated up from his seat, his buoyancy sac inflating slightly to reduce his density. He glided to the plant and settled the report in its proper place behind the tube. With a sigh of relief, Jorven turned his attention to the next sealed tube, this one containing a thin slice of some sort of very juicy root. He pulled the spec report and froze, his 3 heart sacs beating even faster than before. With a violent thrash, his tendrils launched him away from the root and partway across the room. His buoyancy sac had inflated in alarm and now bumped into the ceiling. What's the big issue, Jorven? Maznor, his fellow botanical chemist, asked, tipping slightly into the room, his thermal sensors widening slightly. A slitted eye blinked in confusion at Jorven's obvious panic. You're bright red. What happened? I hear. Have a look. This is that root we were looking at. Maznor took the readout and made an incredulous bubble of noise. What is this thing? It's a root we found, the human said. Jorven shivered. The human said it like this one. My God! Maznor stared at the tox report in horror. Is this some kind of horrific drug? No. The human, sorry, Mr. Jessen? Johnson? Jason. Right, Mr. Jason said he just liked it. To eat. You're joking, right? Maznor's tendrils started to coil and uncoil, while bright red spots flickered over his main body. No. He told us how they prepare it. Lots of glucose and cellulose and starch, with fat and eggs. Jorven spat out the last bit in disgust. Eggs? As in small humans? Humans are viviparous, tub shell. Jorven snapped. Maznor's body flared a bit green at being called a tub shell, but he held his peace and let Jorven continue. No, they use something else as eggs. Something called a chicken. Chicken. Both Jorven and Maznor launched into the air, their bodies flaring red. Behind them, a loud and coarse sound that must have been laughter rang out. It's called a chicken. The human Jason must have come up behind them. His teeth were bared alarmingly, but the pair of botanical chemists had been working with him for some time and knew that this was not a gesture of aggression. Human Jason. Jorven contracted his buoyancy sac, letting himself down from the ceiling with all the grace he could muster. I am afraid we must have obtained the wrong samples. These are all very toxic plants. It has to be a mistake. Let me see. Jason ambled over to the sealed tubes, looking at them closely, then pulling the tox reports. No, this seems about right. Are you telling me that your people willingly consume these nerve agents? Jorven had turned bright red again, but he had managed to avoid floating upward in alarm. Let's see, mint, yep, that's a mint leaf all right. Ginger root, yeah, that's it. Tea leaves. Jason looked at the next tox report, one that Jorven hadn't gotten to yet. Oh ho ho, you're gonna hate this one. He handed it to Jorven, who flew upward into the roof. Caffeine, tannic acid, theobromine, theophylline, citric acid, what is this? Jorven flailed furiously, thrashing in violent agitation. Any one of these could be fatal. And you voluntarily take all of them at once? Jason grinned slightly, again showcasing his teeth. Oh, I see. He sighed and stretched out his hand for the tox report. See, you have to remember that Earth is a death world. Everything is doing its best to not be eaten. Even the plants. Honestly, a lot of these things are good for humans. Good for. What? Jorven's color turned alarmingly close to a deep purple-black. These are poisons! These plants are trying to kill you! And they failed, which makes them taste better. Jason chuckled slightly and tucked the tox report back behind the tea leaf in its carefully sealed jar. As he left, he shouted back, "Do yourself a favor and don't look at the report for the tobacco leaves." After a moment in which Jorven and Maznor slowly restored their dignity, Jorven reached for the next tox report. He hesitated, reading the label on the small red fruit in the tube. Bird's eye pepper. How bad could this one possibly be? Jorven braced himself as he slid the mass spectrometry readout from the next tube. His tendrils coiled tightly, prepared for another shock. Bird's eye pepper, he whispered, reading the label again. It was such a tiny fruit, how dangerous could it be? As the readout appeared, Jorven's eyes widened. Capsaicin? He murmured, scanning through the list of compounds. Scoville heat units exceeding 100,000? His tendrils trembled. He knew capsaicin was the compound responsible for the sensation of burning. Consuming this fruit seemed like a form of self-torture, yet it was apparently a common part of human cuisine. What's in this one? Maznor floated over, curiosity getting the better of him despite his earlier fear. Capsaicin, Jorven said, his voice quivering. It makes things burn. Humans eat it for the sensation. For the sensation? Maznor repeated, aghast. Why would they do that? It's pleasure for them, I think, Jorven said, though the concept baffled him. Humans are strange, Maznor said, shaking his head. They seem to thrive on things that would kill other species. Jorven nodded, feeling a strange mix of admiration and horror. Yes, they are remarkable in their resilience. I suppose it is what makes them so successful. Or maybe just insane, Maznor suggested. Possibly, Jorven agreed. He carefully filed away the report on the bird's eye pepper and moved on to the next sample, his heart sacs pounding with anticipation. This time, it was a thin slice of a root labeled horseradish. Horseradish, Jorven read aloud. Sounds harmless enough. Maznor looked over his shoulder. Given our track record so far, I'd wager it's not. Jorven nodded and pulled up the mass spectrometry data. His eyes widened as he read the list of compounds. Citric acid, he said, his voice trembling. It's another irritant. Causes a burning sensation similar to capsaicin but through a different mechanism. Wonderful, Maznor said dryly. Another pain-inducing substance they consume for pleasure. Jorven filed away the report, his respect for human resilience growing with each new discovery. Let's see what we have next, he said, pulling out the next sample. It was a tiny, innocent-looking leaf labeled bay leaf. He scanned the mass spectrometry data and his tendrils coiled in surprise. Eucalyptol, pinene, cineol, this one's more aromatic. Still, the compounds are strong. Humans use it to flavor their food. Maznor nodded, his eyes narrowing. At least this one doesn't seem as immediately toxic. Jorven agreed, feeling a small sense of relief. Yes, it seems more benign, comparatively speaking. They moved on to the next sample, a thick, fleshy leaf labeled aloe vera. Jorven examined the readout and found compounds that were more familiar. Aloemidin, barbeloin, aloin, these are known for their medicinal properties. Humans use it for healing. Finally, something that makes sense, Maznor said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Jorven nodded. Yes, it's a relief to see something used for positive purposes. As they continued through the samples, they found a mix of toxins and beneficial compounds, each adding to their understanding of human dietary habits. It became clear that humans had an extraordinary ability to adapt to and even thrive on substances that would be deadly to other species. Finally, they reached the last sample, a small, round fruit labeled nutmeg. Jorven scanned the data and his tendrils tightened in shock. Myristicin, safrole, these are psychoactive compounds. In large amounts, this fruit can cause hallucinations and even be toxic. Humans consume this too? Maznor asked, incredulous. Jorven nodded. Yes, but in small amounts. They use it as a spice for flavor. Unbelievable, Maznor said, shaking his head. They truly are a remarkable species. Jorven agreed. Yes, they are. Their ability to survive and even find pleasure in what would be lethal to others is astonishing. As they finished their analysis, Jorven and Maznor sat back, reflecting on what they had learned. Humans, with their death-world origins, had developed a resilience and adaptability that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. They had a unique relationship with their environment, one that allowed them to thrive in conditions that would be fatal to most other species. Jorven couldn't help but feel a deep respect for their human colleague, Jason, and his people. Despite the dangers, they had found ways to not only survive but to enjoy and benefit from the challenges their world presented. It was a lesson in resilience and adaptability that Jorven would not soon forget. As they packed up their equipment, Jason returned, a smile on his face. So, what did you think of our food? Jorven floated up to meet him, his tendrils extending in a gesture of respect. It is remarkable, Mr. Jason. Your people have an extraordinary ability to thrive on what would be deadly to others. It is both terrifying and inspiring. Jason chuckled, his teeth flashing. Well, we do what we can. Glad you found it interesting. Jorven nodded. Indeed, we have learned a great deal. Thank you for sharing this with us. Any time, Jason said, his grin widening. Just wait until you try some of it. Jorven's tendrils stiffened at the thought, but he couldn't deny a growing curiosity. Perhaps one day, he said, his voice tinged with both fear and fascination. As Jason left, Jorven and Maznor exchanged glances. They had much to think about, and even more to learn. The universe was full of wonders and dangers, and humans, it seemed, were uniquely equipped to navigate both. The next day, Jorven sat in the laboratory, his tendrils twitching with anticipation. He and Maznor had decided to conduct a deeper analysis of the human dietary habits. They had requested more samples from Jason, who had happily obliged, bringing a variety of spices, fruits, and vegetables. Jorven looked at the spread before them: cinnamon sticks, cloves, black peppercorns, and a small vial labeled wasabi. Each item seemed innocuous, yet Jorven knew better than to underestimate them. Where should we start? Maznor asked, his tendrils coiling in curiosity. Jorven picked up a cinnamon stick and inserted it into the mass spectrometer. The readout appeared, and Jorven scanned the list of compounds. Cinnamaldehyde, eugenol, coumarin, more irritants and some potential carcinogens. Maznor shook his head. They use this in sweet foods, don't they? Jorven nodded. Yes, it's a common spice in desserts. Incredible, Maznor murmured. They truly have a unique tolerance for these compounds. Next, Jorven inserted a clove into the mass spectrometer. The results were equally startling. Eugenol, acetyl-eugenol, beta-caryophyllene, more irritants and potential toxins. Maznor's tendrils twitched. And they use this in cooking? Yes, Jorven confirmed. It's a common ingredient in savory and sweet dishes. They moved on to the black peppercorns. The readout showed piperine, chavacine, beta-bisabolene, more irritants, with some potential therapeutic properties. It seems that humans have a remarkable ability to derive benefits from substances that are otherwise harmful, Maznor observed. Indeed, Jorven agreed. Their adaptability is extraordinary. Finally, Jorven hesitated before inserting the wasabi sample into the mass spectrometer. The results were immediate and intense. Allyl isothiocyanate, sinigrin, gluconosturdion, powerful irritants and potential carcinogens. Maznor recoiled slightly. They consume this willingly? Jorven nodded. Yes, it is a popular condiment, especially with their seafood. Maznor shook his head in disbelief. Unbelievable. As they finished their analysis, Jason entered the lab, carrying a tray with small portions of various foods. I thought you might like to try some of these, he said, setting the tray down. Jorven and Maznor exchanged nervous glances. Try them? Jorven asked, his tendrils quivering. Jason nodded, his teeth flashing in a smile. Yes, just a small taste. You might find it interesting. Jorven hesitated, then reached for a small piece of ginger root. He held it carefully, his tendrils coiling around it. How do we consume this? Just take a small bite, Jason instructed. Jorven braced himself and took a tiny nibble of the ginger root. The sensation was immediate and intense, a burning, tingling feeling that spread through his mouth. He flinched, but then, as the sensation subsided, he felt a warmth and a slight euphoria. It's interesting, Jorven said, his voice tinged with surprise. Maznor, encouraged by Jorven's reaction, took a small piece of the wasabi and cautiously tasted it. His tendrils flared briefly, but then he relaxed. Remarkable, he said. It's intense, but not unpleasant. Jason chuckled. See? Not so bad, is it? Jorven nodded. No, it is not. Thank you for sharing this with us, Mr. Jason. Anytime, Jason said, his smile widening. I'm glad you found it interesting. As Jason left, Jorven and Maznor sat back, reflecting on their experience. They had not only learned about human dietary habits but had also gained a deeper understanding of their resilience and adaptability. It was a lesson in the strength and diversity of life in the universe, one that Jorven would carry with him for a long time. In the weeks that followed, Jorven and Maznor continued their studies, delving deeper into the complexities of human food and culture. They learned about fermentation, discovering the myriad of microorganisms humans use to transform their food. They explored the world of spices, each one a testament to human ingenuity and tolerance for what would be considered dangerous in other species. Jorven found himself growing more and more fascinated with human resilience. He marveled at their ability to find pleasure in pain, to derive nourishment from toxins, and to adapt to their harsh, death-world environment. It was a testament to their strength and ingenuity, qualities that Jorven deeply admired. One day, Jason brought a new sample to the lab, a small, round fruit he called a habanero pepper. Jorven and Maznor exchanged wary glances but accepted the challenge. They analyzed the pepper, finding it packed with capsaicin, far more potent than the bird's eye pepper they had previously examined. With a mixture of fear and curiosity, Jorven and Maznor decided to taste the habanero. They each took a tiny nibble, bracing themselves for the intense burn. The sensation was immediate and overwhelming, a fiery heat that spread through their mouths and sent waves of pain through their bodies. But as the burn subsided, they found a strange exhilaration, a rush of endorphins that left them feeling euphoric. Jorven laughed, a sound that surprised him. Incredible, he said, his tendrils coiling in delight. It is both painful and pleasurable. Maznor agreed, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Humans are truly remarkable. As they continued their studies, Jorven and Maznor grew to appreciate the complexities of human culture and cuisine. They learned about the various ways humans prepared and consumed their food, each method a testament to their creativity and adaptability. Jorven found himself looking forward to their interactions with Jason, eager to learn more about the human way of life. He marveled at their resilience, their ability to find joy in adversity, and their unyielding spirit. It was a lesson in the strength and diversity of life, one that Jorven would carry with him for a long time. In the end, Jorven realized that the human's ability to thrive in the face of danger was not just a testament to their physical resilience, but also to their indomitable spirit. They had turned their harsh, death-world environment into a place of beauty and wonder, finding ways to survive and even thrive in conditions that would be fatal to most other species. As Jorven and Maznor packed up their equipment, they exchanged glances, a sense of camaraderie growing between them. They had learned much from their studies, not just about human food, but about the resilience and adaptability of life itself. Jorven floated up to meet Jason, his tendrils extending in a gesture of respect. Thank you, Mr. Jason, for sharing your world with us. It has been an enlightening experience. Jason smiled, his teeth flashing. Anytime, Jorven. I'm glad you found it interesting. Jorven said. Indeed we have. Your people are truly remarkable. As Jason left, Jorven and Maznor exchanged glances, a sense of excitement growing between them. They had much to think about, and even more to learn. The universe was full of wonders and dangers, and humans, it seemed, were uniquely equipped to navigate both. Jorven couldn't help but feel a deep respect for their human colleague, Jason, and his people. Despite the dangers, they had found ways to not only survive but to enjoy and benefit from the challenges their world presented. It was a lesson in resilience and adaptability that Jorven would not soon forget. As they prepared for their next study, Jorven felt a sense of anticipation. The universe was vast and full of mysteries, and with their newfound understanding of human resilience, he was eager to explore it further. With Maznor by his side and the lessons they had learned, Jorven knew they were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead.